Welcome to VoteProPot-Cast, the award-winning cannabis news podcast brought to you by VoteProPot.com. Here are your hosts, Phil Adams, Jay Britton, and Andrew McCreadies.
What is marijuana bigotry, and could you be the victim of it? The legalization debate is heating up between the Sanders people and the Biden people. And a study suggests that women may be more sensitive to THC than men. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to VoteProPot-Cast. We are so glad to have you with us. How's everybody doing over there?
Doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. How you doing? Forgot about it.
Doing well.
Has your mood improved at all, Jay? Last time we spoke, you were in kind of a sour, piss-poor mood.
Yeah, I'm in a shit mood.
Yeah, last time we tried to record this episode, yeah.
Yeah, well, we're gonna cheer you up because we have those stories and some other cool stuff. But let's start with something from your home state of the Commonwealth of Virginia.
All right. Big day today.
A big day in cannabis in Virginia as of today, July 1st. Marijuana is now decriminalized in the Commonwealth of Virginia.
Yay!
Yeah.
That's a 27th state. More than half the states
state.
now, right?
Okay.
So now what does that exactly mean, Jay? So, I mean, how much can you carry and what's the fine and all that?
Well, now, before, I believe, Phil, you have it in front of you. What is it?
Well, before, I don't know what it was before. Now, the maximum penalty is still illegal, mind you, but the maximum penalty if you get caught with an ounce or less is a $25 civil fine. Yeah. Okay, that's about half of what I'm paying for the speed cameras. So,
right? No, that's fantastic. Now, a caveat to that is that they've also made THC legal. So as of July 1st, before we had a medical program here in Virginia, but it was CBD and THCA. So it was essentially, no THC.
So now, is that really a medical program?
I know, right? Well, I mean, that's what we had. So that's what we lived with. Now we have THC, but you can't get it anywhere yet. They're still trying to, I guess that the COVID thing has really slowed everybody down. We've got 5 companies. We did a report last week on MedMen getting booted out of Virginia. But but at
least the legal roadblocks are clearing out of the way, are starting to clear out of the way. So that's a big change. And especially since when you think about back in 2018, some 29,000 arrests were made for just possession of marijuana.
Holy moly.
127.
Which is more than all violent crime combined.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
And of course, that's not the only change because, well, the other changes as far as concentrates and, vapes and stuff like that. It used to be a half an ounce or less of drug was up to 30 days in jail and a $500 fine. And
a felony, right?
or often your license is suspended, which is apparently more common than actual jail time. Second conviction be up to a year in jail and $2,500 in fines. And for hash, RSO oil, vape pens, concentrates, all that stuff, that's felony charges. So
you're screwed.
They were.
Yeah.
You were
they
screwed,
were.
Yeah.
Not anymore. It's now a $25 fine. So way to go, Virginia. Man. Progress.
Mm-hmm.
Big time.
Good luck, good luck getting product anytime soon. I did find out some more about what happened in Virginia with MedMen. Well, apparently, what MedMen did was they had the license for Virginia, so and they had a contract for a piece of land, I believe, and what they were trying to do was just sell the contract and the license, which is really worth a lot of money. And they were asking, millions and millions and millions of dollars. And everyone was saying, there's no business. Normally when you would start a business, then you sell the business, but they didn't even have they didn't even didn't even start breaking ground. Or
and they were supposed to be ready to open. I mean, that was part of the contingency on them getting the license was that they would have this property ready, I think, July 1st, and they haven't even broken ground. So
they
Virginia
were hoping to have had it sold before then.
Right.
I guess the new people could probably come in and go, listen, we just bought it. We need more time. But that is what happened.
Now getting back to the new Virginia law, there are also protections geared toward lessening the impact of convictions for simple possession. You can seal the past charges and convictions. New charges wouldn't be sent to records, so it's not going to be the dark mark on your legal police record that it once was.
That's great too.
So there's a multiple positive changes, multiple good news in here, and I hope that's improved your mood a little bit, Jay.
Yeah, a little bit. And I
because
also throw
your
in,
feelings are important to me.
Now I care. I'll throw in this too. We have an interview with Jen Michelle Pedini, the development coordinator of Normal, also the executive director of Virginia Normal, episode 112. So it's a few weeks back, and she really gets into all the details of this. So if you're interested, you're a Virginian, check out episode 112.
Right. Share it with a friend. Now, across the river to our home state, Andrew and my home state of Maryland.
The inferior state of...
Well, at least it's a state and not a freaking commonwealth.
Okay,
Bunch of pretentious bastards. Now, in Maryland, simply reeking of pot is no longer sufficient probable cause for police to search your person or search your car or arrest you. And this was the unanimous ruling handed down by a state court of appeals that determined that police officers violated a man's Fourth Amendment rights by conducting an unreasonable, warrantless search of his person after they found him in a car that smelled like pot. So, it makes a whole lot of sense to me. There can be any number of reasons why your car reeks of weed. It may have nothing to do with you violating any marijuana laws. So I think this is a step in the right direction for reasonable law enforcement and constitutional rights. Let's face it.
Interesting. I mean, why else would you reek like weed unless you're smoking a joint in the car, though?
Well, maybe the person who was in the car right before me smoked a joint and borrowed my car.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I think it's great.
And got high.
All for it.
And I climb in the car and the thing smells like weed. And I'm like, I don't mind, but the cop does. That doesn't mean I had anything to do with it.
Does that also mean private property as well? The cops are walking down the street and they smell pot coming from your house. They can't go in anymore, or could they before?
I don't think they could. I don't think they can search your home without a warrant before.
But they can search your car if they smell marijuana.
Yeah,
they could. Yes.
Okay. But if they walk by down the street and they smell marijuana coming from a house, they couldn't go in?
I don't think so.
That's a good question.
The other question I have is, what about the dogs?
Which dogs?
If a dog's, who is
drug dogs?
Drug dogs trained to smell for drugs, including marijuana, sets off positive, you can't tell the dog, which drug did you smell? I mean, they just say,
right.
They say,
well, presumably they don't have different dogs for different drugs. So yeah.
Well, we've done lots of stories on that.
They could train. They could train dogs that way, but
they could, but they don't.
They don't. Yeah, they're starting to now.
I wonder if they saw that in Maryland, if all the dogs have already been trained, they've gotten new dogs, or they're just going to roll with it. So in other words, if it hits and you get pot and you get caught with weed, they can't try you.
Right. So what if the dog sniffs your car and has a hit, and they search your car and they find coke?
Well,
I don't.
But I don't know. But then again, you could say, I don't know. That's a good question,
I don't think that coke would be admissible in court because it was illegally
if the
obtained.
dog was trained, well, I don't know. If the dog was trained to smell marijuana,
I don't think it matters who does the smelling.
Well, in other words, the dog, if it's trained to smell marijuana and it's no longer illegal or grounds for searching the odor of marijuana, then that dog hitting is no longer admissible.
Yeah, you would think. That's a question for a lawyer,
right.
yeah.
Because,
right.
Well, as far as I understand it,
I think you're right,
that
yeah.
also sort of makes sense that way.
Yeah.
Oh, we'll see what happens.
All right. Well, we've complicated this issue about as much as we possibly can.
It showed our total ignorance on the subject of the law.
We're just making this shit up as we go. No, I'm kidding. No, this is a real thing. And so good news in Maryland and Virginia, and let's hope that continues. Now, I'm very curious about a concept that I was just introduced to, but it seems on the face of it fairly reasonable. Andrew, tell it what is marijuana bigotry?
Oh, please, you've been a victim of it since you were a teenager. Well, for starters, the number one and one of the big issues now are medical marijuana patients who are being discriminated against at work and getting fired or getting hassled at work because they're medical marijuana patients. And even though they live in a state where it's legal, their company or whatever might have policies against marijuana and drugs, and some people might lose their jobs, or it might be an issue. Might get called in for
for disciplinary action,
or get your hand slapped. So that's sort of an issue, and they're approaching that. But there's another thing that happens a lot, and in addition to that, is also there's people who are in recreational states that aren't medical marijuana patients that might test positive in a test for cannabis, though they're not breaking any laws, they still might lose their job.
Yeah, or even, Andrew, like in our area where you've got federal workers, they might be in Maryland where it's legal, but if they work for the federal government, they still keep, right? Yeah. Oh,
absolutely. Or they could be, working for a national corporation that has a national policy about this, irrespective of what the state law is.
Yeah, we see it a lot.
So...
But then there's other types of discrimination. We find that in some people have experienced, and I think we all have, discrimination from family and friends. That, especially maybe not recently, but when we were younger, people, they go, it may even just show its face in just a joke or laughter or ridicule. It might be lighthearted. They go, Drew the stoner. Gigi,
It's fine that I had 7 drinks and threw up in a potted plant at your house the other day. That's fine.
Yeah, right.
But you smoke weed,
right? You smoke weed. Woo.
Good point.
And that can be bad. I know when I sort of announced that, and I put on social networking that, hey, I'm starting VoteProPot.com, man, and I'm like the founder, and I'm advocating out in the open for this. There are members of my family that I have not talked to since, and that was in 2004. And
didn't realize that.
Some of them, they just don't, if I see them at reunions and things or funerals, it's sort of, hi.
You sure it was the weed and not the money you owe them?
I don't know. Before that, I was like Mr. Popular. Everyone, you know me, guys.
Everybody loves Andrew. Absolutely.
I get along with anyone. I never, if someone's going to start an argument, I'm like, okay, yeah, you're an idiot, and I just don't fight with them. And I get along with everybody. Like, so is Jay. I mean, we're both that way.
Same. We all are, really.
Phil's a major prick, but Jay and I are really nice.
Oh, guilty as charged.
Anyway, no, but you get the discrimination. Another form. And that can stink. And I know it's changing. You see the attitude towards marijuana on social media and mainstream media, just all of like the sitcoms, the late night television. I mean, it's all joke. It's so acceptable. Although there still are sort of stereotypes about it. Even comedians are still stereotypical about it. There's like stoner comedians that still tell stereotypical jokes that aren't really true. But
you're right. I saw the other day like a sitcom. And they made a joke about some idiot who was a stoner, and I'm thinking, come on, man, it's 2020. Yeah, I see. Yeah, I know what you're saying. And it's
so
still
you sort of get that, and that's not really fair, I don't think, especially when it comes from people who have alcohol issues. And I was in the bar business. Alcohol, moderate drink. There's nothing wrong with moderate drinking. It's fine. I would say the overwhelming majority of the people who drink do. But there's some people that have problems drinking, and there's some people that have drinking has caused health problems.
Oh yeah,
as well as emotional issues too.
Right,
it can exacerbate
physical, emotional health, mental health problems. Yeah,
it's also and we need to help these people. But it's sort of funny coming from those people who will judge you because of marijuana. And I just think that's sort of funny. But then there's another big one, and I think a lot of men have experienced this. Perhaps some women, but I know a lot of men who have been in relationships and like were married or had girlfriends, and they just were against marijuana. And I know guys who hid their marijuana use from their girlfriends, and in some cases wives. Yep.
Absolutely.
And I've heard of cannabis being an issue and reasons for relationships and marriages to end. And I know that happened to me once, and I was like, oh, man, I don't smoke any more weed, because she was really serious about it. I was like, oh, whatever. Then one day, obviously, bag fell in my pocket or something.
You're only going to be able to hide that for so long.
Right. And I was like, it's no big deal. So it's one of those days, stay up to 4 o'clock in the morning talking about it. It's like, your feelings. And now, but that was literally in the 1980s. That was like, 30, 40 years ago. Yeah. But now it's like, personally, I would go right off the back and listen. I obviously am a marijuana advocate, and I use it. I have a medical.
Kind of obvious,
right? No, but the big deal I think a lot of people had was that it was illegal.
True.
But
true.
I don't know if that was an excuse.
That's interesting. I hadn't looked at that before, Andrew. But you're right. Speaking of men and women in cannabis, I've got a study here that just came out. I got this from the French Toast website I mention a lot, Maria Loreto. And a recent study from the University of Toronto suggests that there are some significant differences between gender with regard to THC affecting women more pronouncedly than men. The study, published in the journal Psychopharmacology, gathered 91 volunteers between the ages of 19 and 25 and had them smoke a joint with either 12.5% THC or a placebo. Participants were monitored for their vital signs and were later asked to complete cognitive tasks and effort scales in hopes of gauging their reactions and measuring how affected they were by cannabis. According to Justin Matheson, the lead author, the study allowed participants to smoke the amount of cannabis they wanted. When participants smoke to their desired high, it's called titrating to effect. Titrating. I've never heard that term. Titrating to effect.
He said tit.
What it means is, you with cannabis, when you smoke cannabis, the effects are so immediate that you can say, "Oh, I'm there," and stop. So the point of this was, the study found that women smoked far less of the cannabis joint.
Yeah.
And had lower THC levels in their blood, yet experienced the same acute effects as men. The main takeaway is that women may need a lower dose of THC to achieve the same degree of intoxication.
Absolutely.
So my first question when I read this was tolerance considered? Maybe some of the women were regular smokers. They don't mention whether or not they asked that question. So the long and short of it is they think maybe estrogen has something to do, and we've seen other studies. Yeah, we've seen other studies to that effect.
How many participants were there?
91. So it's a fairly small study. So
well, still, no, it's not insignificant.
No, it's not insignificant, but those findings were pretty significant in the difference between men and women. So women took a much lower level of THC to achieve the same high, essentially, as men. So there you go, ladies.
Yeah.
You save on the cost.
Just save a little bit on the weed. Maybe that won't be such an issue in your marriage now, because you're saving.
I read an article that it had to do with hormones.
That's what it said. Estrogen, yeah.
And that different times of the month, women needed more or less cannabis to achieve the exact same effect.
No, you're exactly right. And that comes from these studies, because obviously the estrogen levels change throughout the month, and at different times of the month they need less and more cannabis. Other studies have showed that. So kind of interesting.
Sure. Well, I'm going to do a quick follow-up from one we did last week. You remember last week we talked about Attorney General William Barr being the subject of a House panel where a DOJ official testified that Attorney General Barr had initiated improper investigations of up to 10 cannabis mergers in the cannabis industry that were not warranted. Now, apparently, there is a group of House Democrats who are introducing a resolution calling for a possible impeachment of Attorney General Barr because he, quote, abused the power of his office, end quote. So I don't know where this goes. I don't know what if there is a legitimate legal basis for it, but that's what's going on. So.
Yeah, well, he's like the head top cop, the number one law enforcement officer in the country, and he shouldn't be out there doing, going after people for his personal beliefs. I mean,
but you don't know that he is. It's a little early to make that claim. I mean, he hasn't even testified yet. We don't know all the details. We talked about the fact that cannabis is probably the largest growing industry in the United States right now.
Fastest growing. Yes. And there's a lot of questions about these mergers. We've covered it for years, 2 years. Maybe there's a reason why these cases are being looked into. And my question would be, did anything happen? Well, what I read into it, that there was absolutely no grounds to even to have an investigation into these, and there's nothing that appeared to be illegal that they should have done it. Now, the thought that there might be is what they're saying he did. There was no evidence to say that there was a problem. He just didn't like the sound of it and said go after him.
Well, I agree. I don't question whether or not an investigation is required. I question whether or not an impeachment is required at this stage of the game.
They should impeach him. They should arrest him and throw him in jail. If he like to do this stuff, they should throw away the key, man. I think law enforcement officers that betray their trust in all of us to enforce the laws and they go out and break them, that's like your wife cheating on you, man. It's just stabbed in the heart and the back at once.
I agree with the sentiment that when someone breaks the law, that's bad. When law enforcement breaks the law, that's worse. Right. I agree with that. But there is no law that was broken. There is no regulations, rules, guidelines, policies. Nothing was broken according to the Department of Justice, and remember what he did was initiate a second round of requests for information. That's really what this alleged investigation is. He got a first round of information requests from them. They provided documents. He asked for a second round of a second inquiry of questions. So it pushed the investigation that much further, and the people that these career DOJ attorneys said that was not warranted. And what this Elias guy said, he was the guy who testified before Congress. He said, quote, if there is no rule or regulation, then one is missing because that's obviously wrong. Now, in other words, he wants to impeach Barr for breaking a law that doesn't exist because he thinks it should exist. So that's where we are with this. So it's
kind of like what people are doing to Barr, what Barr did to these, to the marijuana people. So he just didn't like it. So let's go after him. He looks like Elton John's evil twin, so I just don't trust him.
He does.
He's got a point there.
He kind of does.
Elton John's straight brother.
Kinda.
All right, let's move on. Speaking of politics, I got a story here about. I got a story here during a Democratic presidential debates. Joe Biden was the kind of lone standout with regard, if you remember, with regard to cannabis reform. Remember, I think one of the questioners asked the question about legalizing, and they all raised their hand pretty much except for Joe. And, Joe has a stance. We understand what his stance has been for years, and it's apparently still that stance, and that is he thinks it should be decriminalized, which is good, but he wants further research. With that said, okay. What he did, what Joe did when he got the nomination, and you have to give him credit for this. He got together Bernie Sanders, says, look, let's put a unity task force together. I'm going to grab some folks, and you grab some folks from your camp, and they're going to get together, and we're going to talk about this. And we're going to talk about. He didn't
have to do that.
He didn't have to do it, and he did. And so I give him credit for that. And I think that they've been getting together now, and according to this article, which is from the French Toast by Brendan Bures, and he quotes the Politico. According to Politico, cannabis legalization has been discussed at length amongst the task force. The group, which has members individually appointed by Sanders and Biden, is focused on criminal justice reform. And some view cannabis as folding within the larger conversation, which makes total sense.
Makes sense to me.
Absolutely. So those in the Sanders category support legalization. We know that. Some within Biden's camp personally endorse ending prohibition, but haven't discussed whether or not they're going to include that issue in the platform. So the way I see it now, apparently there's been some very heated discussions. If you remember, Bernie said during the campaign, what's he going to do on day one of his administration? An executive order legalizing.
Well, Bernie was going to roll a big fat one on the resolute desk and put his feet up and blow smoke rings.
He made that one of his primary. And, in fairness to Bernie, it wasn't about, I want to get stoned, because he says he hasn't smoked in years. It's the criminal reform thing. And he's got an excellent point there. If you look at people of color in prisons, how this huge majority of them are there for getting pulled over by a cop and getting, busted with, more than they should have of cannabis in their car or whatever. Nonviolent. So that's really Bernie's stance on the cannabis thing was, the reform. So it'll be interesting to see. It's not clear whether the task force will recommend Biden change his position with regard to legalization.
But now, are the Biden people and the Sanders people kind of at odds? Is that what's going on here? Are they?
They're at odds because Bernie wants 100% legalization day one. So his immediately, or pretty much an executive order, and supposedly Joe Biden takes a position he would like to immediately decriminalize it nationally. But he hasn't said anything about taking off Schedule 1. Well, he wants more research.
Well, okay, he's evolving. Now, that's a long way from where he used to be a year ago. Big time.
Very true.
So at this rate, he's going to be giving it away free in a couple of years.
Well, it'll be interesting to see. I'll tell you what this whole campaign would change dramatically, and I'm not even sure which way the scale goes. But if Joe Biden was to come out and state that in his platform at the convention, part of that platform was going to be descheduling cannabis and making it federally legal. That would be really interesting.
So that's a trump card. That's almost like he's
no
waiting for
pun
time.
Intended.
That's like bam. He's going to do that 2 weeks before it starts. All this, because the stoners are going to forget you did it after about a week. So you got to wait like a week before to announce it.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to see.
That's the other thing. Also, how is cannabis being manipulated behind the scenes, of these campaigns? It's an issue, and really, when it comes down to it, I really don't think Donald Trump really gives a shit one way or the other. If it's
I really don't think he does.
I don't think any politicians really are like, well, I think it's bad for you. It's what about the children?
No,
fuck.
They can't unless they're just stupid. You're right.
Right.
No,
they
but
all
I
know
do.
That. So
there are a few. There are a few who do, but the majority probably not. You're probably right.
But neither one of these two guys.
In the federal level, I think they're all okay. How are we going to play this? And how do you think this is going to be played in this? Do you think because Trump could come out before him and go, something? I'm going to decriminalize. Yeah. I'm going to let's legalize it. I'll legalize it the first day of my second term.
He doesn't need to wait for a second term. If he wants to do it, he could do it tomorrow.
Well, my guess is that
it's a deal. It's a deal.
My guess is that both sides have focus grouped the shit out of this, and they just don't feel like it's a top vote getter one way or the other.
No.
Well, here's another thing. There's so much going on in this campaign already. And also, we're kind of still far out. there's so much going on that to throw this one more thing in there is just going to be diluted, and it's like it'll be like a dud, and you throw it in there, it'll be a non-issue. But you know what I mean? Because there's so much other shit going on.
The question is, how polarizing is cannabis? I wonder. I mean, really, it doesn't seem to me like it would be anymore. Because even the people, I think they just don't give a shit anymore.
So I think you're right.
So maybe you can't use it as a tool because it's such a bipartisan issue.
Maybe.
Do you think maybe that's it?
Maybe there's just
no
there's just enough political bang for the buck.
Yeah, you can announce it and it ain't going to change. Nothing's going to change. You get voted. Whether
that might be
why
it,
Biden really hasn't made any big announcements. Also, I think Biden is just like he's just saying as little as possible.
Oh, he's doing a smart thing because he's up in the polls. Why would he? Yeah, why risk it? No politician would. Just ride it while it's there. And
we're still 4 months out from the election, and that's an eternity in politics.
If he gave in a little bit more on weed, which I think he could do. We're definitely. First thing I'm going to do is decriminalize it nationally. We're going to take it off Schedule 1 or something like that. I mean, that's all he needs to do. He doesn't have to legalize
I'm sure he has advisors saying, just leave it alone right now. There's no need to get, like Andrew just said, there's no need to pull that in to all the other shit that's going on right now. Just leave it alone.
And the other thing is, we all know, because everyone says they need to legalize it nationally. Okay, answer me this, riddle me this, Batman. How do you do that?
Yeah.
Exactly. How is that done?
Right.
And what exactly is around, there's such a can of worms that happens when I don't even know a way to do it.
No.
It seems to me that the way to do it is for the federal government to simply walk away from it. Take it off Schedule 1
and have Congress pass a law.
And have Congress pass a law that says this is up to the states.
Yep.
And we're not going there is no federal law that is,
treat it just like alcohol.
Treat it just like alcohol and just walk away from it and move on.
Yeah, but then there's all the taxing and licensing. There's so many other. Then,
but that's up to the states.
That's when. Then you think, well, you have a couple questions now. Wait till that happens. There's going to be a million fucking questions.
Yeah, but they'll all be at the state level, though. They'll all be at the state level by that time.
No, there's going to be some. There has to be some on the federal level. But tax and
alcohol isn't taxed federally, is it? I could be wrong. Maybe it is. Is it?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what would when a cannabis company are paying their federal taxes?
Oh yeah. And banking, but once it's off Schedule 1, that doesn't apply anymore. You're. I mean.
We think it does. We assume it doesn't apply anymore, but maybe it does. Maybe Andrew's got a point. Maybe there's a whole shitload.
They're going to have to set up some kind of system, some regulations, and how's that going to happen?
Yeah,
that's the whole thing. When we think that just legalize it, there'll be no problems. When you legalize it, that's when the fucking hard work begins, man. That's when we
see that right now on the state level. Absolutely,
right. Look what we're seeing. Let's imagine when we do that on the national level, especially in the United States, when everybody's got a fucking different opinion, and they'll stop, no progress until we, until we shut our heads and never come to any conclusion,
Right. And Andrew, you've made this point over and over again, and it's worth repeating that just, we talk about it's not a matter of if, but when cannabis is legal. But it's just not the fact of legalization. It's the details of legalization that you got to get right. And so that's why, partly why we're here, is to help people sort through those details and understand all of the things that are at stake here, aside from just the yes or no question of should it or should it not be legalized. That's
right. We've sort of evolved. In 2014, it was, come on, guys, we need to legalize this. And now a lot has changed since I started this.
That's right.
And so now we got to sort of reposition ourselves and let everyone know. We're not just saying we got to legalize it. We're saying we got to do it right.
Yeah, and if you look at
to it, and it's only just begun.
Exactly. And if you look at what we have now, 33 states or whatever with programs, it's a clusterfuck of different. I mean, if you're going from Oklahoma to Texas or to Nebraska, you don't know what the fuck's going on from one state to the next. There's got to be some kind of reciprocity and some kind of convenience. Continuity. Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So, VoteProPot's going nowhere. It might be legalized. It might look like it's going to be legalized soon, but there's going to be a reason for us to discuss cannabis regulations for years to come.
Yep. And we'll be here to bring it to you and give you the best information that we have at the time and just keep it coming. folks, thanks a lot. We're glad you joined us again today. We want you to help us out if you enjoyed the show, and I think you did, or else you wouldn't have stuck around this long. Share it with a friend. Go on Apple Podcasts. Give us a 5-star rating. Get in touch with us. Send us an email.
You can send us an email at podcast@votepropot.com. Call our message line at 240-257-2441 and join our Facebook group.
Yeah, we do a lot of sharing of information on social networking. So we really would like for you to follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn. Now, Twitter and Instagram, personally, I really don't give a shit about. I mean, you guys, man, but
we're there if you want to.
Yeah,
we're there, but I never visit the pages. Dude, I've been doing our Instagram page like once. I don't know.
No, but we do have followers there, and they enjoy it, so it's there. So you know.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. But anyway, please follow us on Facebook, and we're trying to get our numbers up, get more followers, get your friends. If you all can get one person to follow us on Facebook and join the party, man, join the Vote Pro Pot party. So go to Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and Twitter, and do a search for Vote Pro Pot.